Do drugs make you more creative? So we are actually about to discuss this in depth in this podcast, and we're going to talk about real life experiences that both of us have had with drugs and creativity, and share with you what our thoughts are on the whole entire process. So stay tuned till the end because we have some very interesting stories.
We're both under the microscope here.
How many drugs have you done?
Maybe 2.
2 drugs.
What's your favorite doobie? I'm going to hand it over to the feds.
What made you stop?
It's because of love.
Welcome back to another episode of the Light Movement Podcast. This is a podcast where we as artists discuss how you can be successful as an artist without selling your soul to the dark art elitist system. What an intro, right? Okay, so John Milan, John DJ Freezy J. So we're talking about drugs in this. It's kind of a controversial subject.
I agree.
So, John, I think there's this common perception out there, or maybe not so common, I don't know, you can tell me, but a lot of people believe that if you do drugs, particularly psychedelic drugs, or like, marijuana or stuff like that, it will make you more creative. So I'm curious, right off the bat, let's just put it out in the open. What are your thoughts on this subject?
I personally feel marijuana and all drugs will slow you down.
Oh, okay. I was a little bit worried there. I was like, wait, what is it?
I have to be real. I can't say people should do them or not do them. I would say you only have so much of your mind. If you're going to choose to burn it and waste it, you may hit burnout. And that is not fun to see tweakers and burnouts.
Ooh, yikes. Okay, so what are some of your experiences that you've had with drugs and painting or drawing in your case?
Well, I lived in Hawaii and I had a lot of free time on my hands. I chose to get into sketching, and that was my main thing to do other than surfing or skateboarding. And unfortunately, I was around the wrong crowds. It was promoted, but it wasn't as if I would stay that way. I would just be around the party atmosphere. I kept thinking, I need to find out what is it all about. So I had tried many different things, but when I almost died many times, each time I kept telling myself, oh, what am I putting myself through? And is it worth it to get that creativity? I feel people have such a short time to live on Earth, and they're going to do what they want, and they're not going to really listen to authority. So hearing people's experience like you and I, hopefully it would be helpful.
So I want to just unpack, because there's a lot densely packed into that sentence, or those sentences that you just said. So first of all, so do you think doing drugs makes you more creative? Because you said it's not worth it for the creativity.
I don't feel it's worth it.
But the question is, do you think they make you more creative? Because a lot of people think that they do. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I don't want to hurt people's feelings or say what's right and wrong in life. I have been around it. I found I was way more productive without it. But it may open doors of perception, or it may cause you to think in different ways. If you're on one track, it may open up possibilities, but you will suffer for it, because in the end result of everything, it will never be enough. You may get a good feeling, but you'll definitely slow down. If you're in a race with some people doing painting exposés and they are high as a mofo, and then we, people who are not, compete against them, you will see the result. Maybe we should test it out.
No, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think so.
I personally cannot even have a whiskey, and I'm not able to draw or paint. It's totally lame.
Okay, so just to kind of clarify, your thoughts are that it's almost like a shortcut. Like if you try to, but it's not sustainable long term.
I would say it's all of those things, because you could stay.
How many drugs have you done?
Maybe 2.
2 drugs.
That's a funny question.
Hey, I've done a lot of drugs too. So, I mean, I'm a lot younger. So,
Jacob Marcus Dunn.
yeah.
I'm writing a novel here. I'm going to hand it over to the feds.
Oh,
Okay. We're both under the microscope here.
okay.
What's your favorite doobie?
Okay. Favorite doobie. Oh man, that's tough. Well, I mean, I can tell you what my favorite doobie used to be because I don't smoke doobs anymore. The favorite doobie used to be with raw papers, or
Like
a
newspaper? Like drawing paper?
No, like the brand raw. But I stopped smoking doobs about 3.5 years ago when I moved in with you guys. Actually,
Excellent choice.
yeah.
What are your feelings about artists who want to be highly productive? Can they experiment with mushrooms, LSD, every drug, and be totally fine and still be highly productive?
That's a really good question. Let me first just say a little bit about my experience with drugs because I think that it's important context. So I actually started smoking pot when I was like 11 years old. My brother used to actually sell weed, and I was always like the youngest kid at the parties. So that kind of morphed over time throughout high school. Probably when I was like 16 or 17, I started doing LSD. And then I tried other drugs, like other psychedelic drugs, like mushrooms and peyote. And I even did DMT. Pretty insane. But so basically, I did all that, and I was really into creative writing, really into producing music and stuff. And I felt like, especially with LSD, I felt like it was like a shortcut for me. Like I could take this drug, access like infinite creativity, or what it felt like was infinite creativity in the moment. Like I would take like LSD and then overnight produce an entire song from start to finish with like 80 tracks on it, and then wake up, or not wake up, but kind of come to the next day and sober up and like create something that I didn't even know like how to recreate. So to me, it felt like this like shortcut. And in the beginning, it felt really cool. Like it felt like, whoa, this is awesome. And I actually in college started to develop this like reputation of like, oh, he's the guy. He's like the trippy guy, you know, like he's the guy who does LSD. And what that resulted in is like I became super dependent on the drugs in order to be able to create. I felt like if I was sober, I wasn't able to create. And I didn't like that. You know, I felt like that was a huge hindrance. I knew that long term, I was frying my brain. So it felt like this vicious cycle where I constantly had to be high in order to create. And I knew that I really wanted to create. Like that's all that I really wanted to do. But I could feel like physiologically, like I was losing muscle mass. I was losing like the desire to eat. I wasn't hardly sleeping. I would literally stay up and skip like 3 nights of sleep a week, something like that. So on average, so I was like sleeping only 4 nights out of the week, and it was just super unhealthy. And I could see it in my face. I'd look in the mirror and my eyes were like sinking into my skull, and it was depressing. So I realized that I had to get out of this. Gosh, this is a long story. But basically, long story short, I discovered over time that if I created sober, I was able to create for longer. And it actually felt better when I did it. Because I remembered the process. I was like getting better as a result of that. Like I was improving in my creative practice. I was, able to grow. Whereas it felt like when I was doing drugs, it was like a cheat code where I was, for that time, I would be better. But then as soon as that wore off, I would go back to crap level. So is that something that's relatable for you? Like what is your experience with
I was just putting
drugs
myself into that. I wanted to be the person who could handle anything, and all my friends seemed to have the most high tolerance. So we all built our tolerance as high as we could. But I did not venture into the other drugs because they completely scared me. I didn't want to go into outer space and never come back. And I'd seen so many people hit burnout.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept it real minimal and decided it is not for me. And I can be much more creative without it. But I'm sure For thousands of years, all types of drugs have been used for that purpose, to go into another state and to be able to recall it and explain it to others, which is difficult. And those art forms may have mostly disappeared. And so all we can go on in history is everyone is very straight-laced, and they would never venture into that. It's like a subject no one talks about. It's a perfect subject that we could talk about today, because the world is slowly going, let's legalize it and see what happens, but don't play the game.
Well, I would just say that, like, from my own experience, creativity and like tapping into that is a drug of its own. You know, if we're talking about getting out of your mind, like, people do drugs because they want to sort of escape their current mindset or their current reality, right? I mean, at least that's why I did it. The thing is, you can achieve that state of being without drugs at all. You can achieve that state of being purely through practice and discipline too. I mean, it's hard to hear for, creative people. Like, a lot of times creative people don't like the word discipline because they think of, military, or they think of, showing up in 9-to-5 job and, going to work and doing your hours and whatever. But if you are disciplined and you treat your creative practice with respect, then you'll be able to access that sort of out-of-body creative experience at will.
You will feel so much better without the heavy baggage that comes with all the different drugs. There's even a chance you would never go back to it. You and I both are the ones that stopped cold turkey, you'd call it, just completely stopped.
Yeah.
And I hear more and more examples of that. So being in the creative river, having that as your outlet, as a way to get better and better with your styles of art and everything, it's so rewarding, and it feels so good to you that everything else in life almost doesn't matter. But of course, at any time you could snap out of it, but you don't. You want to stay in that flow. That's highly addictive.
Yeah, the flow state.
In music too.
Well, I think with anything creative, like, you could be in a flow state in business, in marketing, and
just put some zeros on it. Just do it.
Put some 10x it, man. Grant Cardone. Okay,
think big and think bigger.
Go big or go bigger. You're either taking massive action or you're taking passive action.
You're going to ride a tricycle in the desert, or you want to be in a Ferrari on the highway? Which one do you want?
Yeah, Ferrari. Come on.
When I was younger, I had a similar experience. I was around, hippie families, different things. I became an expert doobie roller, so I wanted to help out. And then, people would lay down a giant dried plant, perfect buds everywhere. And they just say, here's some papers, roll us all some smokes, And I just lived in that lifestyle for so long that being normal just felt really good. So every chance I would get out of it, it's like a miracle that I survived it. And some people think I didn't survive it. But I lost a lot of friends, and it's pretty sad.
Mm-hmm. The sad thing is that a lot of people think that when you're doing those drugs, like, it's the easy route. But in reality, it's actually the hard route, in my opinion.
Because there's never enough. You could try, and it becomes such a way of life, and people believe it so fully that it's their way of life. There's hardly anyone who could convince them not to.
How did you, what made you stop?
It's because of love.
Could you elaborate?
Yes, I wanted to be married, and I wanted to raise families, and I didn't know how to do that. I reached out to the Lord, and that's what I wanted to do. So I got myself on track with help from the Lord. But I wouldn't say there was a group of people who grabbed me up and said, you're going to get straight now, I did have people who spoke positively into my life, so I at least had a little bit of someone to look up to.
So what was the ultimate turning point for you? You said it's love. Was there a specific moment when you're like, okay, you know what? That's it. I've had enough.
Yeah, my marriage was on the rocks. It was a story you'd hear, and I hadn't painted for a year or two. I had not painted, and I was at my lowest point. It wasn't that I was always having pot or anything. I mean, I would love to have it. I just had no money to get any.
Oh, wow.
So I was low in many ways.
Okay, so hold on. I'm trying to decipher here. So it was love or it was the lack of money that made you not smoke weed anymore? Is both? Or
That's right. Yes, it was a choice. It was a real choice.
Okay.
And I became much more productive, like pretty fast after that. I'd been like under the lead blanket thinking that is the way of life. Who's going to tell me otherwise? So I can imagine people who are hearing this, they want to know, what is life all about? Because if you don't choose wisely for yourself, you just want to be a painter who's slowed down to a few paintings per year, you may stay in that zone for a long time.
One thing that I kind of, I don't know if I struggle with it. I guess I kind of struggle with it. I thought for a long time, like maybe the only reason I am creative now is because I did those drugs before. That was like a misperception or misconception that I had before. And I thought like, okay, was it like just all these different things that I did? Or, and I've actually come to the realization that it slowed me down because all of the creativity that I have now, and, I'm obviously like, I feel like at the beginning of that. I'm like only beginning to realize or tap into creativity. I had to overcome so many bad habits that were established when I was doing drugs. It sounds so bland, but especially to maybe someone who, does drugs and is watching this right now. But, getting sleep is like really important for creativity. Like if you want to do something great with your life, I do not think that you can be addicted to drugs and do something really great with your life. That's super controversial. I think that, some people, it might stir some feathers or ruffle some feathers. I mean, but...
well, I would want to challenge them, to say they could try it for themselves to get straight for a month and see if you're more productive. And don't put yourself through a wrong test. It has to be a real one because you're only fooling yourself. No one else... They'll love to see the results of your test, but if you decide to go back to that world, it'll be the same. If you want to get further along in your career and affect a lot of people in a positive way, it's worth a try.
So what do you mean by like a real test?
To be free and clear of those things.
Okay, so like 100% cold turkey.
And to see how many more productive things you do each day. And give yourself the real example, just so that you write it in a journal, you write about your whole experience and then report back to me.
So what are your thoughts on like caffeine and alcohol then? Is it like no drugs whatsoever? Because I mean, those are drugs. Sugar is a drug too, carbohydrates.
Very good point. Most things you want to have in moderation and some things you want to have zero.
A lot of people believe that addiction is a disease. Like they think that like if you are addicted or you have an addictive personality, then you are like, you have a disease. It's something that afflicts you. But I would say that it can be like a superpower if you have an addictive personality, because the people who are able to become obsessed with something are the people who really change the world. Like if you are able to wield and channel your addiction, like let's just say you're completely addicted to smoking pot all day long and like you hyper obsess over that, you focus on that all the time and you are able to overcome that or replace that addiction with something else that's positive, then you can become unstoppable. I mean, basically, it's like you're replacing those dopamine spikes because like you're just getting this like dopamine feedback from like you smoking pot. It's creating, I mean, really, I'm not a neuroscientist, so I don't understand 100% what goes on. But what I do know is it's like causing this rapid firing of neurons within your brain. And, this like, it's like an overstimulation of your brain almost when you smoke pot. But I think if you're able to replace that with something else that is like life-giving, like let's just say you paint all the time, you become a paint maniac, and you're obsessed with painting, then you're going to have a huge advantage over someone who doesn't have an obsessive type of personality, or someone who isn't able to like 100% laser in on that and do that nonstop. What are your thoughts?
I agree. It's good point. And by getting creative in those ways, you'll see that it is so much more beneficial. It's the opposite of dragging you down. You're going up, and you will dream better, you will write better, you will sleep better, you'll care about people more. I want to say it's a trick to get involved in those things, because if you're around the wrong crowd, and they will leave you when you need them most, and you will have none of those substances, and you will be searching yourself and searching the world. But if you know where positive people are and positive vices would be, so say you're into making smoothies and drinks, your body is going to naturally only allow you to have so much. You won't overdo it on oranges, all those healthy choices. If you're going to have coffee, you're going to need to invest in wet wipes and all kinds of stuff, because you will burn yourself out that way. Let me tell you, you cannot have more than 7 per day. But you can add the coffee grounds into your art piece. You can be inspired by coffee to a certain point, and then you're going to have this low crash. So there's all these other herbal teas and things that make you feel good. And if you choose those,
Yerba mate.
that is what nature intended for us to find and work with. It's a controversial topic, because if you say the hemp plant, there's hundreds and hundreds of uses for it in a positive way. If you were to look at society, it has been a trick to hold back technology and inventions and things that are useful for people. So otherwise, the government wouldn't have invested in trillions and trillions into factories making that product. It's just a controversial topic.
Wow. Yeah. A whole new can of worms opened up. Where do you think that phrase came from?
Let's put the lid back on that.
A can of worms.
Is it for keep fishing? Those worms back in that jar.
Do you think it's for fishing? Like, where do you think the phrase?
Editor, take that out.
No. Yeah, I'm curious. What are your thoughts on that subject? Both the can of worms, and also what John was just saying about the government investing. And I mean, I'm curious, like throughout this whole thing, we're just two human beings with subjective experiences. So I'm curious what you, the viewer, your thoughts are on the subject. Like,
we would like to know.
What is your experience with drugs and creativity, and hindering or helping? Like I have obviously, maybe I had a negative experience where I overdid it and, went way too far. Like, my opinion is that it's not ever really useful or helpful, but that's just my opinion. So I'm curious what your opinion is. Disagree with me. Politely, please.
Yeah, we're keeping it mellow. I mean, we're not saying what's right and wrong. It's always going to be up to you.
It is right. I mean, I think, so do you think that there is a right and wrong? Like, do you think there is such a thing as objectively right and objectively wrong?
I may be the wrong person to ask that.
Because you can't pick
the
favorites.
Word wrong. No, because I would say another controversial thing. Who can make a law that we all have to follow? And why do they have the authority? Life is so short. Who is
elected
bossing
officials
us around? Why are there laws made to prevent certain things from being invented? Or what if someone wants to be a pothead and they live to be 120? I'm not going to break our theory here.
So now you're advocating.
I'm not advocating it.
Okay, so you're just questioning, like, what if?
Free thought, free things in society.
Yeah, no,
choices.
Free thought for sure.
So I want people to know that I'm not a goody two-shoes and I don't know it all, but from my perspective, it will slow you down. It's not because it's a law.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Like, basically, it doesn't matter what we think and believe. No individual should be able to control other individuals, essentially. You're saying that everyone should have the freedom to make their own decisions, except for, murder or, rape or child abuse, or
there's certain laws that have been made that do protect others.
Protecting basic human rights essentially is essential. But then beyond that, people should have their own individual liberty to make their own decisions. What about when now we're getting really controversial, those decisions start to infringe upon other people's personal liberties? Like, let's just say someone gets super duper high and they're so high that, they, well, I don't want to bring up anything graphic, but we've all heard of what's happened with people who've done bath salts. So you don't want people high on bath salts in the streets.
I have not heard that.
You haven't? Oh, I don't even think I can say it on YouTube. Let's just say that it involves cannibalism. People high on bath salts. So the question is, when someone is doing a drug like that and it now infringes on someone else's personal liberty, what are your thoughts?
We've gone into a whole nother world here.
I know.
I would say you don't want to infringe on rights, and you better watch yourself around others. Keep yourself together. Don't cause harm in any way. Don't cause harm to any individuals in this life.
Yeah.
You got to have a peaceful life. We don't want wars. We don't want people harming each other. We're not on that side of things. We want inventions for the future, painters building the future that they love to be in.
So basically, as long as you're not infringing on other people's basic human rights, then like you should be free to do whatever you want. We're just providing our opinions
I may change
on what you should do with your
maybe in life I might
freedom.
change my mind later and say, oh, there should be all these restrictions, but I really...
No, that's fine. I mean, it's okay to...
As an artist, you're going to look for the wild things, but just be careful. We made it through, but a lot of my friends did not make it. Mm-hmm. They went to jail. They died. There's so many accidents. It's awful in Hawaii. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I know. Another contributing factor for me and why I'm anti-drug. And it's so funny because I was just talking with Deantra the other day and saying that like eventually I would love to start a nonprofit treatment facility for people who are addicted to drugs to like help them become entrepreneurs and inventors and contributors to society that like actually works. That's like not, a 12-step program or something like that. Because my subjective experience is that, my brother went to rehab where they prescribed him drugs to overcome drugs. Those drugs led to him overdosing on other drugs and dying. So I just think that the whole rehab system is kind of flawed. I mean, and that's a blanket statement. I'm sure that there are some good rehabs out there, but generally the
person has to want to change.
Yeah,
because
no.
I have tried with so many friends to help them, and your emotions get tied up in it. But a person who knows everything, we're not a superhuman in that way. We may use our gift to go as far as we can in our career, but it's not that we know all the psychology of every person, and they're so different. And that's a miracle itself. It's perfect to have so much variation of different personalities. Mm-hmm. But how they're going to react when they have withdrawals or something, if it's not kosher, you could have these bad reactions. So
I see what you're saying.
I'm not having fears about it. I'm saying you better brace yourself, because a lot of people may not pull through. I mean, we want them to, but...
If I did start that nonprofit, is what you're saying, like it would be difficult.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
It is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if one person gets up, I mean, you got to give it a try if you feel strongly about it.
I think it's more of one of those things like down the road. Like I don't necessarily want to dedicate my whole life to it. I don't think that's my calling, but I think that it is probably a facet of it because it's something that I've overcome and I would love to help other people overcome. So are you in? Are you going to be my first donor?
I will be there. I am going to be there. I'm pretty much trying to do it through life, using whatever I know to help others. It's my main thing in life. I mean, it's like I don't have a big journal saying I'm going to help people and then I write it hundreds of times. I know it. I've said it once.
No, you said it twice now.
I'm going to attempt to uplift everyone I can and use my stories to share and help out with that.
So we've gone on many different rabbit trails, which isn't that interesting. That whole phrase comes from
Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland, right? So isn't that like all just a metaphor for LSD, the whole story?
And probably every other psychedelic experience.
It's rabbit hole too. It's not even rabbit trail. What's your favorite idiom? If you had to just pick one and that was the only idiom that you're allowed to use, yeah.
I try to avoid idioms. It's hard to pick one. Alice in Wonderland's a good example. I have a lot of word hangups.
Mm-hmm.
We could do another podcast about how many word hangups I have. I thought I was getting better, but maybe I'm not. When I hear people just say these things, if I was to ever describe them, it's going to be hurtful. It's going to be sad for others. And then it's going to make me look pretentious.
Do you feel like you're pretentious?
Sometimes. Why am I so picky?
What does it mean to be pretentious? Because isn't it just, someone who thinks that they're better than everyone else?
Right. I do not want to be known that way. But when I hear people say the dumbest things and I cannot react, I just have to. We all do it.
No, I agree. I think that to some extent, everyone's pretentious, right?
And the word hang up thing, I don't know if other people have that. If I was to even say those words, I could just go like a whole list of them. And why can't I shake that and just let people have their words? I mean,
I feel like we should have done this podcast with Joe Rogan.
One day we are going to. I want to hear his perspectives on this particular subject.
Yeah, well, I know he does shrooms and he smokes weed for sure. So I'm curious.
Oh, right away, he'll just start cussing and swearing. Yeah, they're effing awesome. We can't stop me, man. I don't know.
So you don't like Joe Rogan?
I do. But I watch him like go up in those fights and he just changes his voice. And he's all mad at you and McGregor. Or, McGregor, not you and McGregor.
Okay, so what would you say is the moral of the story?
Choose wisely things that you're going to put into your body. I mean, what are you going to do in your life career? You want to be positive and do the best you can. So my point of view is don't let things slow you down. If you know they're not going to be profitable to you, don't invest in that.
You know what, John? I completely agree. I think that if you decide to live your life and you're doing drugs all the time, then ultimately you're going to have some holes in your life. You're not going to, live the fulfilled life that you were destined to live. So I think that ultimately, like you said, it's up to you. You can choose to use drugs if you want to. Out of personal experience, granted, I have a limited personal experience. I'm only 24 years old. However, I probably did enough drugs for a 50-year-old or more. And I can tell you from my experience that living a sober life is much more rewarding, enriching, fulfilling, and I feel so much more creative. And I just feel like a better human being as a result. And I'm able to be more productive. And, you just have all these negative constructs that you build up as a result of drugs. Drugs, they completely rewire your brain. They change your brain on a physiological level. And, there's going to take some time when you get off drugs for you to overcome that and to change back. But once you do, it's going to be so fulfilling and rewarding. So I just encourage you, viewer, to live the sober life. It's the best life.
And you can always write to us, ask us questions.
Yeah, seriously. Leave us a comment, like and subscribe to the channel for more content. Probably not like this. This is a little bit more on the left field or right field or whatever the saying is, the idiom. But
and in conclusion, when you want to get free of things, you have to decide it and you have to stick with it.
Agreed. So make the commitment and you will live a better life as a result. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, I am serious, like and subscribe. So, and let us know what you thought in the comments below. Seriously, I'm very genuinely curious. So thank you.
Thanks too.